Oh,
So. Welcome to the April meeting of the Sumter Community Veterans Club. You all please rise.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation.
Thank you. First of all, we need to thank Stein for the donuts and Dennis Abrams for picking them up for us. We get them from the donut wheel every month, and they're fabulous. If you haven't been to the donut wheel on your own, over on Also, we have a change in our board of directors effective at the end of our cookout. Jim Strock has decided to move to Colorado. She will be leaving our board after the cookout. And we want to thank Jimmy because she has done the cookout for several years as well as other things, been very involved in the club, treasure profile, and on and on. So Jimmy, thank you. Did you want to make a speech?
Yeah.
All right. Also welcome David Morales from the DAV. If anybody needs appointments or whatever for help with data processing, David is our go-to guy. So he is at most of our meetings. Thank you, David. Bob Whalen, are you ready with the call and veterans? Certainly.
As an introduction, you should see the other guy. He's right there with it. This one wasn't too bad, but when he pulled out his carpet knife and got me here, that was get rid of all the frivolity there. We have two veterans to recognize, two fallen veterans to recognize at this meeting. One is Kent Grau, who was the U.S. Army between 1959 and 1961. He passed away recently, and his wife Joyce was not able to be here with us today. The second is Bill O'Loughlin. Bill O'Loughlin also passed away recently. He was U.S. Navy, and he was stationed basically on the East Coast. And his family is having an internment tomorrow at the Veterans Cemetery. What I'd like to recognize is niece Sarah and her husband Mike, who are both out of the U.S. Army, and that family is also here today to help us recognize those two. And if you stand, please stand for TAP. I'd like to thank the families for coming, and I'd also like to thank Al Bannon, our trumpet for TAPS. Thank you.
Our speaker today is from the Buffalo Soldiers. One of them, Larry Richard, is here from Fort Huachuca, and the other one, Charles Young, who calls himself Young Charles Young, is here from Casa Grande. They are going to do the presentation on the Buffalo Soldiers. They have all kinds of things for you to view afterwards. They will be hanging around afterwards if we don't get your questions answered during the meeting. And there will also be a little bit of a slide presentation afterwards. So enjoy. Welcome.
Testing.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to thank Larry for asking me to come down and participate. I'm a veteran myself from the United States Army. I won't hold those of you more in the other, I won't hold that against you. But and also, it's been a pleasure. And say my name is Charles, and I live in Casa Grande, and we've been doing these living history presentations for about 25 years or so. And it's a pleasure to see so many veterans because this is not just about an African American history, it's about the United States Army history, military history. And how the Buffalo Soldiers got started. The Civil War, it ended. And as we all know, all the soldiers in the Army at that time were all volunteers. So once the war ended, everybody went home. And there was a lot of things going out here in the West. All the bad guys from back east were sneaking out to the West and doing the little stuff. And then they were approaching on the Native American lands. And there was a lot of stuff going on. So July 28, 1866, the 39th Congress, I think it was, enacted first time ever. They said, well, that's the first time ever peacetime army, which they did. And seeing how the African Americans had fought so valiantly in the Civil War, they said, you know what? Why don't we have some all-black regiments? So thus was born the 9th and 10th Cavalry, the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st Infantry, which was later in 1869 was consolidated into the 24th and the 25th Infantry. You see there, there's that 1869 for consolidation. And so, and they served here in the west of the Mississippi up until about 1899, which was the end of the Indian Wars. If you can see here from pardon, you got this, so you can move this back a little bit. Yeah. And if you see this map here, this is the map up until 1889 for all the forts where the Buffalo Soldiers were stationed at. And if you look right around here, you see a lot of the forts where they were stationed were right on the border. So they were the first border patrol. Because because every time we go someplace, and especially if it's an event, we would have some border patrol agents, me being the devilish individual that I am, and I'll see the border patrol agents, and there'll be usually be a young one and an old one there, and I'll go to the young one and say, hey, do you know who the first border patrol was? And of course he'll stop and look at me, of course we were. And the older guy, no, we weren't. And of course he turns and looks at him like, what? He said, the Buffalo Soldiers were the first border patrol. And so you see they were quite prominent out here in the West. Now, how the Buffalo Soldiers got their name depends on which book you read. If you read one book, it says the Native Americans hadn't seen African Americans before, and they likened their hair to the mane of the buffalo. Okay, I can see that. And then when they were stationed up here in these places here, and I found that recently they were also stationed in Alaska, which I didn't know. So when they're stationed places up here where it gets extremely cold, and I had a couple scholarships to go to play football and run track, and I asked the coach one question, did it snow? He said, yep. I said, I'm not coming. I don't do snow. So when they were stationed up there, they had on buffalo skin. So yeah, that's a possible theory. And then the third one, which we like to embrace, is that the Native Americans had never quite encountered a soldier that fought with such tenacity. They never gave up, which likened their spirit to that of the buffalo. They said if a buffalo was wounded, they said they just keep coming, they just never give up, and they likened their spirit to that. And there's one incident that happened here in Arizona with the Juan Paymaster robbery, where Isaiah Mays, who was the Medal of Honor winner, was wounded in both his legs and in his arms. He crawled 2 miles to get help for his fellow buffalo soldier. And considering most of them were former slaves, so they were really, used to having nothing. And so, at least, I don't know about the other military branches, but at the end of the Civil War, they were seeking employment and going into the military, they got their 3 hops and a cot, So, and they embraced it because it was a matter of honor for them to wear the uniform, and they got food and so forth. So they really, really enjoyed it, and they embraced being. And if you see, as a thing, the 9th Cavalry wasn't deactivated till 1950. A lot of people don't realize that the last unit of the Buffalo was deactivated in 1951. Yeah, it was the last unit deactivated, and even then, we had a gentleman that used to be with us, he's passed on, that he was in the 24th Infantry, Mr. Billy Stewart, at the time. I guess it was President Truman. You probably know a little more than I do that he said that the services were integrated, but even though he didn't, it wasn't an immediate thing. But that's when the last Buffalo was deactivated.
I'm First Sergeant Larry Richards, C Troop, 10th United States Horse Cavalry of Arizona. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. I'm going to tag on what Charles said about the inception of the troops, the Black troops, 24th, 25th, 9th, and 10th Cavalry. As he said, the Civil War had come to an end. And with that coming to the end, you had the soldiers of the standing army wanting to get back to the front. See, they've been gone for 4 years fighting, brother against brother. But at the end of the war, the army was in need of personnel. So now you got millions of freed slaves to fill those gaps, which had never been done before. However, at the same time, the expansion west was being looked at, west of the Mississippi. And really the purpose of these units was to establish routes throughout the West, run telegraph lines that escort stagecoaches, apprehend the bad guys, as he indicated, and set up forts along the trails west for supplies, while wagon trains were starting to make the journeys into the wastelands of the West to establish. In that, the hostilities began between the Native Americans and the United States government. We didn't have these in the cavalry back then. But of course, that being it was a necessity, I guess, because of the movement west, the expansion west. But the conflict between the government and the Native Americans was that they were trying to preserve their way of life. And it was just something that I guess it was an eminent domain. But the lands were here to be taken to be settled, and that's what happened. So once the West was somewhat established, our roles changed again to escorting stagecoaches, apprehending outlaws, the border patrol that he mentioned is because one of the things is that Pancho Villa, he raided into the United States, a town called New Mexico. And Columbus, New Mexico. Thank you very much. He crossed the border into the United States, into New Mexico, and raided, and then went back across. But we were established at that point to patrol those borders, and Fort Huachuca was one of the main forts that was home for. And then, like Charles showed you on the map, the progression west, all these territories, these are forts to protect the citizenry and settlement of railroad, stage line, and telegraph. So we were very instrumental in the westward movement. And as Charles indicated, we were a known unit up until 1951. That's when the armies became desegregated. My father was in Germany 3 days, he turned 20 in Germany, 3 days before the Germans surrendered. So, to let the Russian army come in and put the final blow. So and his units, they were, awaiting orders to go into the South Pacific. But by the time, they had the shots and everything, he dropped the bomb. But in that time, waiting orders, they were at the French Riviera. And, I'm saying, Pop, that must have been tough. You know, waiting orders in the French Riviera. He said, well, we'll do that. But, he actually came stateside back to Fort Huachuca. And we're originally from Chicago, talking about Alaska. But, they met Mom and, but, we took him back to Fort Huachuca, and he was impressed that they still had the parade grounds, I think, and the barracks. I haven't been there in a while, but I imagine, and he was impressed. He got emotional over that. But as in 1951, did we become mechanized? The cavalry became mechanized.
I'm not sure, probably some of the gentlemen here, the old time vets, they have knowledge about it, nothing. And I know the cavalry became mechanized.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
The cavalry. And we have a distinguished history as far as awards and medals. Charles, would you like to tell them about the congressional?
well, there was, during the Indian Wars, there was approximately 20 African Americans that received the Medal of Honor, which for various things, like if you have a chance and you have any free time, you can go on YouTube and look up the WHAM, W-H-A-M, paymaster robbery, and you might see somebody you know. Okay, and that could be, it was a young lady from Eastern Arizona College, and she wanted to do, it was filmed up in Globe, and that's where it basically took place. And so she wanted, as a class project, wanted to recreate the incident itself, and basically it was involved the Buffalo Soldiers. One gentleman, I said, that got the Medal of Honor, Isaiah Mays, was, that's how he got his Medal of Honor, because they were ambushed allegedly by some of the Mormon cowboys that lived in the area. The money was $28,000, get what it equates to nowadays, but the money was never found. And unfortunately, even though the cowboys were identified, that we won't go into that, they were identified, they were found not guilty. Yeah, so we won't go into that. We all understand that they were found not guilty, even though there was a lady there. Oh, she can't think of her name now. But anyway, she was a gambler. Her and her husband ran a gambling ring, and they went to different forts. Like I guess I was in the army, and they would gamble with the soldiers. They were going to collect the money, and she was riding with them, and she, identified all the guys. Of course, they didn't. She unfortunately had to be African American, so they said, but still, they were found not guilty. And what I wanted to get into also is that now I have a question for we have a lot of who was the first African American to attend West Point? Oh, well, I couldn't get anybody. That was a trick question. I couldn't get anybody to bite on that one. Huh? No, that was a trick question because the question is, who was the first African American to attend West Point? The first African American to attend it was I think last name Webster, and he was attended in 1870. But now somebody says, who was the first African American to graduate from West Point? It was Mr. Henry Osar Flipper. He was the first American to graduate from West Point. Okay, the 4 years he was there, nobody ever spoke to him. He was pretty much ostracized. So can you imagine being someplace for 4 years and nobody ever speaking to you? But he was the first graduate. So if anybody ever tries to pull it through, they say, who was the first African American to attend? Say, well, it was Webster. Who was the first to graduate? It was Flipper. Now, Flipper was commissioned as the second lieutenant, and he went, he was stationed in Oklahoma. I can't think of it right now, but anyway. And unfortunately, I think it was Fort Sill. He was also stationed down at, where we're gonna go, down to Fort Concho too. And he was accused allegedly of misappropriating money from the county commissary officer. And unfortunately, the officer, his commanding officer, sort of had an in for him. And he was discharged because of becoming an officer because he put the money back himself And then there was some things, so he was discharged. And then you had, John Hanks Alexander and Charles Young. I look pretty good for 100 and some years old. That's why I say young Charles. And they were roommates. They were fortunate. They were roommates while they were at West Point. And John Hanks Alexander graduated. And unfortunately, he had a heart condition and he died at a very young age. And then that only left Charles Young. And you see, I have the picture here. And because Charles Young had a illustrious career. And at the time, he made it up to a full-bird colonel, which at that time was the highest ranking African-American in the Army. And just about I think it was 4 to 6 months ago, he was posthumously promoted to brigadier general. Because during that time, he was discharged because he had high blood pressure, supposedly. And they discharged him, and he went back to Ohio and taught at Wilberforce College. He taught military science and mathematics. And to prove his fitness for duty, he rode his horse from Ohio to Washington, D.C. And so on that, they said, okay, you're fit for duty. You're fit for duty. And at that time, the war was going on. So him being the full-bird colonel, also being in the military, you know what his next step would have been, was a brigadier general. And of course, the Army at that time was not quite ready for him to be a brigadier general at the time. So he got sent to Liberia because contracted malaria and passed. And so that was pretty much the end of it till the other individuals came along. And Charles Young, like I said, who were the first park rangers?
National Park.
And who was the first park superintendent? Captain Charles Young. And they worked, and you can see the picture here of one of the Buffalo soldiers. Actually, that's an infantry guy, and how I can tell it, the rifle that he had had a long infantry rifle, and they patrolled our national park, and they were the first park ranger. And they accomplished more the 3 months they were there than all the other units had been there together. And also what we like to throw in is that, now we have, it's sort of funny, there was a lady that was allegedly a Buffalo soldier. Yeah, I know, because we've been talking for years and years, we've been talking with Kathy Williams, and then just recently, one of our mentors, Dr. Langolier, was sharing with me that come to find out, are you ready for this one? That he was a cross-dresser. So whether or not, like I said, I have to see, excuse me, I have to see Dr. Langolier, because when he told me, I was like, but it's going to explain some things, because supposedly during the Civil War, the Union came through, and she lived in Missouri, and she became the cook for the general. And then, of course, after the Civil War ended, there was no employment. So she said, well, what are we going to do for employment? So what she did, she disguised herself as a man and went and enlisted in the 38th Infantry. And she was a cook. And unfortunately, she got sick one time and had to go to the infirmary. You saw it was coming, huh? And so the doctor, of course, examined and said, oh, my surprise. Surprise. So unfortunately, during that time, females were not allowed in the military, so she was discharged. And she moved to Colorado, supposedly as the story goes, she moved to Colorado, and she got married, and then her husband that she married stole her horses and ran off. And so we just also, it was another presentation, we were some of the people, I think one of the people said, well, he found out, it wasn't a real woman, and that's why he stole the horse and ran off. I said, yeah, that's a good possibility.
That could do
Yeah, that would sort of mess up your day. And so unfortunately, and this is where I can sort of understand a little bit, because after that, she sort of just disappeared. And she was never heard of again. So, and she never had any children, which was not a big deal, but it was just sort of, just that little there, maybe that was a possibility. Like I said, we've only given you a sort of brief snippet because I know we were sort of on a time thing here. So if you have any questions, or before we go,
Okay, I'd like to just bring in a couple of things historically. Everyone knows about the charge, Roosevelt's charge of San Juan Hill. The Buffalo soldiers were involved in it because they provided the 9th and 10th of the just
I forget the exact name.
Buffalo soldiers. They were providing the pin down fire for that charge to take place. Because you guys will know, that pretty easy shot downhill. So if you're going uphill, we were on the east side, dividing, pinning them down, so that charge could be made. And once they top the hill, it was over.
Listen, he did pretty exactly what Larry just said, but also, if you look at the history books, it wasn't San Juan Hill. It was Kettle Hill. Okay, and Teddy Roosevelt, how can I put this with a bunch of army, would not have made it to be president because he would have gotten killed if it hadn't been for the Buffalo Soldiers.
And he did, when they returned from Cuba. He was at the bottom of the step to shake each one of their hands as they boarded. Now, I'd like to say a little thing about the uniform. My uniform is strictly cavalry, horse cavalry. And this was the dress that we would have, of course, it's this not field dress, you know, that's dirty shirt blue and John Wayne hat on it. But this is Civil War.
No, not Civil War.
Indian War, thank you. And Charles is dressed infantry. And the reason you can tell is yellow always indicates cavalry. Blue, infantry.
And in some later years, during the Juan Paymaster run, for whatever reason, the Army changed the infantry to white. So I have
White
no-
stripe.
Yeah, white stripe.
Now, a little history about the horse. We all ride. You know, I had to give up my horse because I can't put my foot up the stirrup. But we do what we do now on the ground. He still has his horse. But a horse was an ideal vehicle for that time. He had four-wheel drive. The steering. You know, you could accelerate. He ate natural gas and gave natural feed and gave natural gas. So he was ahead of his time as far, but the horse was very important to the cavalry because that was our means of transportation. If we were out in the field and we lost the horse, we might as well put on blue because we'd be on foot with bunions big as onions. And on patrol, you would carry the necessities. Extra horseshoes, extra grain. We would use this, a wagon. But if it's just troopers on patrol, we just had the necessities. Extra shoes, like I say, to do whatever you have to do out in the field. Now, the pay back then was $13 a month.
That was pretty private, so that's pretty private.
But-
Yeah, private sergeant corporals, but then they only had privates, corporals, the hard strike 3 sergeant, sergeant, and the first sergeant, and then sergeant major. That was all the NCO ranks they had at that time.
And originally, the Buffalo Soldiers had to have white officers. That was in the congressional decree. I think the highest group of rank is, would be sergeant major. Yeah. And that's if you could read.
Reading right, yeah.
Yeah, read right, then you can. But, what we like to tell also is that trying to get those officers for black units, a lot of them turned it down, and there was the guarantee of a raise in ranks, you know. But no one wanted to have that because officers and gentlemen, that's a club. Yeah, and, you know, they kind of stick together on that, and I
Watching against some officers here, I'm sure, so watching.
Very. Very. I'm being very careful. Anyhow, I guess they would look down upon if they came up through the ranks that way. You know, we took the easy way in. Now, we love to tell this story. Is that General George Armstrong Custer was offered a black unit and he turned it down.
And we thank you to this very day.
And, he was still,
And unfortunately, if I remember correctly, there was a troop of Buffalo soldiers somewhere nearby, and unfortunately, some reason he called it brunettes. And he said,
Yes.
no, I don't want those brunettes over here, I got this, and Fine, yeah, not a problem. We won't hold that against him.
Just found out too, that one of his scouts was there.
No, I don't think he was a scout. I think he was there. I know who you're talking about. I think he was there. I don't know if he was a scout, but the Native Americans, because they desecrated all the bodies, they were there, but they didn't bother him because they knew him.
And Sitting Bulls actually said that. Usually.
Right. Yeah, because they knew Dorman, yeah, Dorman.
So, a little bit of history. Hopefully enlighten you. To say, certainly, we're open to questions.
Yeah, like I say, we just gave you a big brief snippet due to the time frame, because their history, we got from 1866 to 1951. There's a lot, and I cannot even begin to remember half the stuff, you know, and you talk about, and that's why Larry and I, we like doing it together, because we piggyback off each other, you know, when I forget, he remembers, and vice versa, and we sort of keep it
And
going.
we get to that stage where. You say that? What that? I remember the day. But,
Is there any questions or any comments? Yes, sir.
The Laughlin, Nevada, there is a small fort called Fort Pike. And I'm not sure if Fort Pike is on your map or not.
No.
Fort Pike was on the Mojave Trail, where Indians and wagon trains were going from east to west all the way up to Los Angeles, and I'm not sure if it's there.
Yeah, these are the, from what I can understand, these are the main forts, and there was a lot of little, you know, you call
Well, this one would have been 1/4 the size of this building here.
okay, yeah, they might have a lot of little,
that would be an outpost.
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yes, sir.
There was a battleground Washington, got a fort up there near Vancouver, Washington called town called Battle.
See, Washington, we got, Fort Walla Walla,
Yeah, Fort Walla Walla, and that's it.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, because like I said, there are a lot of little, these are just, as I said, these are the main forts that the Buffalo Soldiers were stationed at. Now, there are probably little outposts that they had, you know, and so forth. Oh, just before we go, I have one thing, do they have time? Yeah, how many are familiar, with the Lone Ranger? I always those at the very end. How many know the Lone Ranger? Now, how many of you actually knew that the Lone Ranger
Based upon a story, a true story.
was African American? Surprise, surprise, huh? And his name was Bass Reeves. Now, how, you know, to this very day, we're still trying to figure out and trying to research how in the devil a Texas Ranger got to be, now, he did have a Native American sidekick. And he passed out silver dollars as opposed to silver bullets. You know, he couldn't read or write, he was born a slave. And how he got to be, like I said, he wasn't a ranger, he was hired by Judge for the hanging judge, he was hired by him. So the Lone Ranger comes up, like I said, if anybody finds out, let me know. This is the Lone Ranger, they said, yeah.
After the Alamo,
What was the question?
He said, he was asking if any Buffalo soldiers at
San Jacinto. I can try to address that. San Jacinto was the battle. Santa Anna had blown up the Alamo. But that's what Sam Houston's army had formed to defeat Santa Anna at San Jacinto. But that was in 1837, I believe. And we weren't formed until
1866.
yeah. But they're, you know, the whole thing about the Alamo and Santa Ana is that there were Americans living in Texas was Mexico at that time. And they were bringing in settlers and everything. The Mexicans were saying, the Mexican government was saying, you're welcome, we'll lease you the land or whatever, but you can't bring slaves. You can't bring slaves. They did not recognize slavery in Mexico. But that whole battle was a fight for land rights and to form a government, and more importantly, an army. But they didn't have enough at the time to defend the Alamo. But they certainly had enough at San Jacinto, so they stopped them right there. Sir,
Is the Buffalo Soldiers Museum at Fort Huachuca about as complete?
Is the Buffalo Soldiers Museum in Fort Huachuca about as complete as you can get for that museum?
Well, I've been to Fort Huachuca now. The last time I heard, it's not the Buffalo Soldier Museum anymore. They changed it years ago. Because when they opened up, in case you're interested, if you go down to Tucson, to the Quincy Douglas Library, they have a Buffalo Soldier Memorial that was put up there about a year or two ago. It's a very nice one, and I'm from the commanding officer there, and come to find out, I went to the museum there when it was the Buffalo Soldier Museum, but they changed it to the Horse Soldier Museum or something like that. They still have a section that's dedicated to the Buffalo Soldiers, but it's not called the Buffalo Soldier Museum anymore. Yes, ma'am.
Question. My understanding, I got big bell. My understanding is that the last battle of the Civil War was fought up the road here on Capitol Peak.
Yes, ma'am, you're correct.
Were you all present at that battle?
we hadn't been informed.
No,
We hadn't been informed at that point. And was that the last battle, Charles?
yeah, that was the last battle of the Civil War.
Yeah.
I know it's the only one fought in Arizona, and the South won, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But those soldiers were headed back east to where the war was being fought, and the Apaches stopped there. I've actually seen the graves on the Dragoon Mountains there, where the daughters of the Confederacy had marked their grave right there. So the Picacho was the last and only battle fought here.
Yeah, I mean, that was the last battle of the Civil War. That was fine.
And neither one of you were there?
See, I'm good. Okay, well,
That's
we
it.
have a little presentation, I think, right, Rich?
Thank you. That was very, very interesting.
Everyone see the screen?
Oh, okay.
I wanted to present each of you with paperweight, so that you remember that you were here at. Thank you so much.
I couldn't get
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd also like to remind all of you that are here that there is a CD that presentation covers some of. There's additional information, and it will be on our website. So if there's more stuff that you want to know, go to our website, look up Buffalo Soldiers. It's a YouTube thing. And it will be on our website. So please utilize that resource. Okay, we'll go to the business portion of our meeting. Richard. Martin. Treasurer's report.
Did you want to run that?
The show. Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, all right, I didn't realize that. Thanks, John.
Give me a second, I have to figure out where to. Oh, forgive me. Give me a sec here. We'll get it back. Where's Larry when you need him?
Okay, well, it'll be on our website, so you can view the whole thing. It's about, I believe, a 12-minute. Something like that, yeah. So it'll be there, feel free to find it and watch it. So we'll continue, Gordon.
Lights.
Good morning. This is the treasurer's report ending March the 31st. Started out with a beginning balance of $3,008. We had the following deposits on the day of the last meeting. We had an $854 deposit, $700 of the day's donation for 2 homes to be sold, and $154 from the camp. We also had a deposit on the first, $480. That was a group of checks Dick Two had collected for uniforms or shirts for the organization. And this time we took the checks and I deposited and wrote a check to the embroidery. We also had the 30th of this month, $863, which was for barbecue sales. We had expenditures of $72.32 for Patriots Pantry, $470 for the embroiderer. The other side I paid for the shirts, and a $65.49 expenditure for the best part coming up. We have 2 checks that have not been passed. One goes back to the first month on the 4th of January. That was for Project Healing Waters. He gave a presentation here, and there's been a little confusion with the check. I think the man presented it to the bill. Check said if it spoke on this week. Yes, it's going to get 23. The other one is for $1,200 for the winter flight. And last week they said it was deposited. I checked again this morning and it still isn't. So can't answer that. We have a final balance on the 31st of $3,567.19. Our Patriots Pantry had a balance that we had left to spend, sort of on our increasing amount that we pledged to them of $448 in the last meeting. We agreed to bump our pledge amount up another $1,000, so the closing balance as of today is $1,448. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Obviously, you can tell we had trouble giving money away. Okay, the spring cookout, which is coming up next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, next Saturday. We are selling tickets outside right after this meeting at 30. Be our last ticket sale date. After that, the ticket sale will be on PayPal. That will be announced in the communicator on Thursday. Those tickets actually end, or that site disappear on Sunday night. So it's important for everybody to get the tickets so that we can get a count to make our purchases and stuff. Got some of the stuff done, but we have a lot of stuff yet to do. Co-chairs, Jimmy Strock and Sharon Bender, who is currently in Texas, down in the wedding. But they have asked that if there's anybody here that wants to volunteer, please do so. If you have already been contacted by Sharon and have given her the answer, yes, I will, no, I won't, you don't need to do that again, but this is for other people, if not, let it be known that you would like to help. There's a sign out sheet. Jimmy has it.
It'll be at the.
And it'll be out there at the table. Please let her know. All she's gonna really want is your name and email address, and everything will be contacted, you know, as sign sheets on. Any questions about the cookout? Need to remember, it is a cookout. It is not a barbecue. Barbecue is in the fall. Okay? Here, we are having a cookout. All right. And I mixed them up. Honor flight. We have, I just found out this morning, 3 people going on honor flight in April. Dick two, I looked right at you. Tom Shambo is going with, his guardian is going to be his son. Mike Donahue is going with the guardian from U of A. And they had a cancellation, and we have an alternate here in Sunflower. Gordon is going to go with someone from U of A as well. So we have 3 people. The honor flight is the 23rd through the 25th. For anybody that has been on the honor flight, and even if you haven't, but have been down at the airport, it is an unbelievable experience, both to get on the plane. The whole community of Tucson is there, and you get off the plane when the community of Tucson is there again. So all of you, mark your calendars for the 23rd, early in the morning, and the 25th, later in the afternoon, and welcome these 3 people and their escorts back. Okay,
What about the times that on the 23rd?
I have no idea.
Thank you.
I just know it's early. Gordon, did they tell you what time you needed to be there?
We're going to, a casino, I forget, somewhere at 5:30. For ground transportation there to the airport. It's not commercial, there's a charter flight. Right, both ways.
It's very early. And then when they get back, typically, it's the same schedule that I was on. It's approximately 7 o'clock, but there'll be news media there and everything else. Okay, moving on, this Saturday, memorial service going to happen out at the Marana Airport, and it is a service that recognizes the Marines that were in the accident out there in 2000, and I'm sure probably a lot of people here remember that accident out there. So run out at 10 o'clock on Saturday and help memorialize those 19 Marines that were accidentally killed in that disaster. Okay. Last month, Arlette Rios was here from Mark Kelly's office, and I was able to meet with her because I have a perennial issue. It's nothing that has to do with anything really important. It is simply a word that is described incorrectly in the law. And the word is proceeds rather than income. For example, if it went away, there it is. Okay. If I bought $5,000 of a security and I turned around and sold that security for $5,100, I received $100 in income. Does everybody agree with that? Okay. I turned around and reinvested the income, $5,100, and I turned around and sold it for $5,000. Basically, now I have had no income for the year to wash. However, the what the VA should count as income, if they do not want to take the loss, is $100. Clear? What they count instead is the word proceeds. So you can see from this example that my proceeds are $5,100 plus 5,000. Keep in mind, all of this, this is a fictitious example, but all of this would represent my money. They count $10,100 as income B for that particular year. Now, what happens is that drops you out of potential eligibility if you're limited because of income. And this has happened to me every year since 2016. Every year, I send a rebuttal saying, this is not income, this is proceeds. The law says proceeds. And they go by the law. So I have been exempted every year. When I was talking with Arlette Rios, she said to me, Richard, bring this up at your meeting, because if it's affecting you, huzzah, it's affecting someone else. What she would like you to do is she would like you to come forward. She will ask for paperwork and submit it to Mark Kelly to see if it's possible to get that word changed. It's just a matter of changing it from proceeds to income. So it's a bureaucratic process that probably will take 15 years, but it's only a matter of changing one word. Okay. First time attendees. Do we have any first time attendees today? How about attendees that have returned from an absence of a while? Name and your rank.
My name is John Bottleson. Branch of Service in Army Security Agency. I was here from 2002 to 2015. Back up to Colorado because of cancer. And now I'm back again full time. At the time of 2002 to 2015, I was just a snowbird. But know all about everything that went on and stuff. But it's great to be back. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. For the good of the cause.
Hopefully you all hear me.
No, we can't.
Can't.
The reason is
Okay, here we go. I'd like to talk about Dave just real quick. I had the privilege to go down and meet with him 2 weeks ago. I recommend if you need something to do with VA, you have friends, things similar to Dave. There's two things about him that are unique. Number one, he knows the paperwork. He reaches up, pulls it down. Here's the most important thing that man knows. He knows the right words to put down. And I saw that, and it took like 20 minutes, he was done, paperwork went in, I nailed it. Thank you, Dave. The lady that does embroidery work donated to us no charge, a cap, which is normally $10. And a sample veteran shirt. So we can sell these and the money will go to Gordon and it's pure profit. The other thing is we've made an arrangement because we get so few orders now that I've committed to them. They're gonna order 12 of the red shirts, which are the most popular for both the Veteran Cemetery and for here, so that they'll be in stock and they get a delivery faster. If she doesn't buy shirts of at least 12 at one time, her cost is like $30 to have it delivered, and she's been eating that cost. So I have an order sheet if you're interested in buying a shirt today. and it's payable on delivery. If you want either one of these two items, it's pay today and get delivery today. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Do you know when the next time is that you're going to be selling shirts to the entire community?
No, I don't offhand.
Okay, our ticket sales are starting at 10:30. So we're gonna be setting up a table out there. I'm gonna be walking in after I'm finished speaking. Remember, if you have not already made arrangements with Sharon, that you're gonna volunteer, have volunteer sheets out there, like you to sign up. And then we'll get in touch with you and find out what you want to do and what's available. And I don't know what people have already signed up for. So the sheets are blank as far as what's going to do. Just give us your information and we'll get in touch with you. Okay? Also, my house is under contract. Thank you, Tina. Second viewer made an offer and we've accepted. So anybody who has any spare time in the next 3 weeks, I can sure use some help. Okay, thank you guys. It has been honor and a pleasure to be a part of this Veterans Club. Thank you so much.
Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? David, and remember the Buffalo Soldiers are here afterwards, so you can visit with them.
I'd like to say that, like the gentleman said, the reason we know this is we have to go to school to be recertified every year. Because things are constitution. The PACT Act. You know the difference between a blue water sailor and a brown water sailor? The brown water sailor was Vietnam, the PT boats. They were eligible for Agent Orange. The blue water sailors on the aircraft carrier 12 miles from the coast, they were not. Not until January the 1st, 2020, were they eligible for Agent Orange. During that time, how many have died of cancer? See, if you have a disability, go see us. We're right behind the Bisbee Breakfast Cafe and the Backstrip Mall on Ina Road. And we have 17 service officers to help you. So we recommend to make an appointment, because that way you go right in. And if you walk in and there's somebody ahead of you with appointment, we're going to attend to the appointment first. The other thing is we have a lot of handicap equipment. We got walkers, we got wheelchairs, we got motorized scooters, and we need to get rid of them because we have a bunch. So if you know of any veterans, the keyword veterans, we'll give them a wheelchair, motorized, whatever they need, okay? We're there for the veteran and the widow. Every time a veteran dies, and if they're buried here in Marana, if I know of the widow, we contact her and we do a DIC. They get approximately half of the husband's disability. But you got to do the paperwork. You have to do a DIC, and a DIC is only 18 pages long. We're not going to do it. We know how to do it, so send the widows to us so we can do the paperwork and they can start drawing. The VA is not going to give it to you. You have to apply. Keyword, you have to apply. We're there to help the veterans. So go see us. If nothing else, stop in, have a cup of coffee with us. Thank you.
David,
Thank you, Lord.
if a veteran dies and it's not part of the service-connected disability, is the wife still eligible?
If he's at 100% over 10 years, yes.
So the answer is no, it's not 100%, it's less than 10 years.
That's correct.
She gets nothing, or is it a part?
Nothing. It has to be service connected. like in other, like say he has some heart disease through Agent Orange, he passes away, doesn't have let's say he only has 20%, he can apply through the heart. But it has to be service related for 110 years.
Just info, David left his business card here on the table, has his phone number. So get the business card, so you got his number.
Hey, anything, anybody else? We're adjourned.
Wait,